Have you ever felt like your to-do list is Netflix watch list and your brain is indecisive remote? Here is a great chance to change it because in this video I will provide you with fundamental information about willpower, but could be used as a base or one of the principles of any kind of productivity technique. After finishing this video, you will understand not only how willpower emerges and why it changes, but also you will know how to get in control of it and the most important, keep it in control. As a side note, I promise you that you won't need to get into strict schedule or avoid all fun activities in order to get noticeable difference of your willpower and productivity. So can one actually master his willpower at all? It could seem that some people just have this productive nature. They are able to do massive amount of hard work and it does not seem hard for them. Probably many of us would recognize ourselves in opposite situation. We need to do just one tiny task, it's really important for us, but we can't force ourselves to do it. Somehow there's always something more urgent for us, some unexpected events, a lot of little tasks but you just have to complete. And you probably know how it goes. For example, you plan to do the task, but you just must get something from a shop. After that, you promise yourself you'll start it just after a cup of coffee or an email check. And somehow, you end up organizing entire wardrobe as a procrastination measure or just binge watch TV, but not completing that one important task of a day. I want to calm you down and assure you that productivity is not some kind of unchangeable trait decided by nature. Quite the opposite. Anyone, you included, can be more productive and just spin out of this procrastination cycle. It becomes really easy once you know fundamentals of willpower and just few small tweaks to control it. That's exactly what you're going to know at the end of this video. Let's start unraveling these willpower mysteries by first of all figuring out fundamentals about it. And the main character here is chemical in your brain, dopamine. As some of you may already know, dopamine is responsible for anticipation and reward of certain activity. Notice that I said it's responsible for anticipation, not only pleasure or fulfillment. That means that after completing an activity, you would not necessarily feel like you're more filled with this dopamine and you need less of it. Usually, you would only want more and right after getting some. This happens because dopamine works not by filling you, like food does in stomach for example, but it is just stimulating receptors and the brain gets used to the stimulation, wanting more and more of it. I have a great analogy for you to get some better understanding. Imagine you are in a cave that produces an echo after make a sound, and someone wants to say something for you. After that someone says a sentence, there is a big remaining echo, so in order for next message to be clear, he either has to wait for a silence or shout even louder. In practice, this would translate to overstimulation. You would search for more or at least equally stimulating activity. Nothing seems to be worth your attention until your tolerance for dopamine lowers back down. At this point, you might be wondering how this is connected to you procrastinating. I will tell you right away. The most likely reason you procrastinate is because you try to jump from a high to low dopamine stimulating activity. For example, if you have been playing new exciting game on your PC for a few hours and after that you want to complete hard project, well, maybe you will manage it, but it won't be easy for you and chances are that project won't turn out as good as it could have been. Because even you can force yourself to work really hard on it, you can't force chemical reactions in your brain. Okay, so does it mean, for example, that you can't play computer games or do other exciting activities if you want to be productive? No, you absolutely can enjoy your life and be productive. I will provide a few methods how to get into this productive state, and right after that I will share tips on how to stay in it, because it's much easier to stay on the track rather than to relapse to overstimulation once again and force yourself to get back. Let's get to the methods. I'll be honest and tell you that one of them I like to use much more than others. But of course it does not mean it will be the same for you. Nevertheless, I put them in an order from least to the most useful and practical for me. The first one maybe is for really determined people, or maybe for ones that need quickly get a lot of willpower for a big project. and it is classic detoxification. Maybe some of you already heard of it, but I still will do a quick breakdown. To do successful dopamine detoxification, you need to set yourself a period of time, most likely not shorter than at least 24 or 48 hours for you to feel any effects. And for this period of time, you want to eliminate all the things that can create big imbalance of your dopamine levels. These activities include drug or alcohol use, social media, video games, consuming sugary or processed foods, binge watching, and so on. You would need to go through all your usual activities and decide if it makes you more or less focused. And that's it. You start your timer and avoid these activities. I have to warn you that it won't be easy at first. You'll be so tempted by many, if not all, activities from your forbidden list. But you must be strong and not visit the list, because a reward, a sign of successful detoxification, is a relief of these temptations without fulfilling them. Tip that might help you achieve it is to add friction to forbidden activities and make others easier to reach. By adding friction, I mean increasing effort needed to do those activities by any means. For example, if you are trying to get by without a certain app, hide it, or even better, delete it from your phone. This way, even if you really want to use it, you can't just automatically do a few clicks for it. You need to search for it, wait for it to install, possibly log in after that as well. And the best part is that you can do this to almost any activity. For example, you would like to avoid playing computer games and you don't need your computer for anything else right now? Well, you can unplug every cable of it, put it back into the box or somewhere in other room. This will help to at least some extent, because overcoming friction requires the same willpower you're seeking to get. You may ask, what activity is left on an OK list? In case you struggle to find one, it only shows that the most activities today are highly stimulating. That's one reason why a lot of people these days experience motivation and procrastination problems. Even I can't tell you what exact activities will sound good for you. I will give you a few examples for you to be able to find similar ones for yourself. These would be journaling, walking or jogging, self-reflecting, or having calm conversation. All of these might seem not super engaging, but it surely will be like this until you can start binge watching with a few clicks on your phone. Try to experiment with activities that would be okay with you, just make sure they're not too exciting and not producing dopamine spikes. The second method is partial detoxification. This is effective when you feel that one activity constantly makes you really unproductive and consumes a lot of time. In this case, you would stop doing this one activity for an unlimited amount of time. It may feel extreme, but considering 80 to 20 principle, that 80% of consequences usually comes from 20% of causes, it can make sense. So for example, you feel that Reels and other short content is not doing good for you. So you cut it completely and watch only long type of videos. I have to point out that one critical mistake you can make is to pick not the most damaging activity, but just the one you can avoid. If you do this, you will suffer from lack of activity and also not get full effect of effort, so try not to do this. And finally, we get to the part where I share my favorite way of stopping overstimulation cycle. And after that, you'll get tips on how to not relapse back to old habits. A quick thing before we go for it is that I hope you already found some useful info in this video. And if you did, I would ask you to give a like and consider becoming a subscriber of this channel, the one that wants to live his superior life with help from videos like this. Now let's break down my way of staying away from overstimulation. Sometimes I would be using things from other methods as well, such as having somewhat lower dopamine activities for a day, or also trying to point out any time consumers in my habits. But the most useful thing I found is to never drastically go downhill with dopamine levels. How does it look in practice? Well, if I need to start or complete a big scary project, I would make it a first activity of the day. Sure, I would do my morning routine, but after that, I will start with this project. Sometimes, of course, I would feel it's okay to have a little dopamine break. For example, I may pick up a phone to reply in some chats, but I would try to keep my dopamine level really close to project levels. When I stop working on this project, I would go to other tasks that should have higher dopamine levels than the one completed. This way, I keep climbing these dopamine steps gradually, without big spikes. This allows me to notice how my dopamine levels are changing in the same step, in the same activity, from a progress I make, which would not be the case if I come from a high to really low dopamine activity, because the difference between these levels will be huge, and these tiny wiggles down there would not feel significant. Also, because I have this steady increase of dopamine until the night, I never need to force a reset with detoxification. It goes up and then it is at its highest point. I just go to sleep. After sleep, levels naturally won't be so high, so I can once again start my day with productive work. Surely, there are breaks, there are other kind of structured days. Maybe it would be boring to keep the same routine every day. But this is the method I use when I need to tackle bigger tasks and I don't want for overstimulation to get in the way. And here are quick tips on how to not relapse back to overstimulation. Tip number 1. Try to reduce jumping from one activity to the other. This jumping creates novelty and secretly increases dopamine levels. Second tip, try to have similar daily routine or at least same sleeping pattern. If you are interested in how to have better sleep, here's the link to a video in the upper right corner or in description down below. Sleep really works like magic. I have mentioned dopamine steps as rule for all activities, but in general, tip number 3 is try to have a highlight of a day, the task that you start your day with and that has priority over other tasks. The fourth tip, try to work without interruptions. The reason is the same as for not jumping between the tasks. Interruptions come unexpected, grab your attention and destroy focus. So try to have at least some minimal duration working blocks, but you simply can't be reached or interrupted. Tip number 5. Have an emergency plan for relapsing. For example, you've noticed that you started an unplanned binge-watching session or simply drift out of schedule. Try to think what's the best you can do in these situations. Do you start a short detoxification diet? Do you do partial detoxification of current activity, or maybe you just go for a walk? It's up to you to decide what the plan is, but try to know clearly what your steps of motivation emergency are. At this point, you know a lot more about willpower, but wait! All your knowledge and work will be wasted if you don't know what to do with it. That's why I created this productivity playlist where you can find the useful guidance. If you don't want to search for a video in this playlist, here is a video recommended personally for you based on your preferences. If you haven't done already, I recommend to subscribe in order to be first getting insights for your superior life. That's it from me, see you in the next one.